you about what they've got, making the planet so hot, hot as a holocaust. Blow up, everything's going to go up, even if you don't show up in your chemise Lacoste. Total eclipse, it's a total eclipse, it's a total eclipse of the sun. Hello there, thrill seekers, and that was a bit of a song called Total Eclipse by Klaus Nomi. Klaus Nomi is the guy who gave Jimmy Image his name. Jimmy Image is the lead singer of Zero Defects. And the Total Eclipse around here was a big ripoff. I sat out there with Ziggy trying to watch it, and we didn't see nothing. Also, I wanted to mention that my friend Zuiko Redding Roshi has passed away, and I was very sad to hear that. She was one of the few really, truly authentic Zen teachers out there in America. She ran a place called the Cedar Rapids Zen Center, and I was really sad to hear that she passed away on April 5th. And here's a picture of me with her at a sesshin called Great Sky. All right, now today's topic is... okay, let me see what I can say about today's topic. I received two sort of communications via the interwebs recently about kind of the same subject, and that made me think maybe it's time to do a video about it. One was a guy who wrote to me from... He'd been going to some Zen center. I'm not sure where he was from. Sorry. And he'd been going to some Zen center there, and the teacher had an affair with a married woman, and he apparently had tried to keep it quiet, but then everything blew up. But after everything blew up, he came clean, and he said, yeah, I did this. And he... I don't know, went to rehab or something. I don't know if it's a rehab, but he went somewhere and had some counseling about it, and he's trying to kind of get his life back on track. And the guy who wrote me was very distressed about whether he should continue following this teacher or not. And separate from that, but about the same time, within like a day or two of each other, I had put up on Instagram a quote from Jiddu Krishnamurti, and I've talked about Jiddu Krishnamurti on this, what do we call this, YouTube channel. I mentioned his book, You Are the World, was it last week or the week before anyway, recently. Jiddu Krishnamurti was a big influence on my life, and I really liked his books. And this guy was upset at me for putting something up by Jiddu Krishnamurti because we can't take spiritual advice from a guy who slept with his married secretary. And apparently the scuttlebutt about Jiddu Krishnamurti is he had some kind of an affair with his secretary who was married at the time. And there's this tell-all book about it, which I downloaded on my Kindle, I don't know, a couple years ago, and I couldn't get through it. I read the first few chapters, and it's just too boring. I'm sorry. It was not interesting to me at all. And maybe that's why I want to talk about. So these things happen. So I don't know anything about the guys, the guy who wrote me whose teacher had an affair with his married student. I don't know if she was a student even. I'm not even sure who she was. So I don't know much about that. What I do know a little about Krishnamurti's affair was there's this book that's written about it, and I just felt like when I was reading this book, I'm reading one of these books where somebody's really trying to get me to get emotionally involved, but they're not getting me emotionally involved. I don't have much interest in these kind of soap operas and things, and I can't follow them. You know, I was just trying to watch Shogun. I guess Shogun is probably a really good show. It's on, I don't know if it's Hulu or Netflix or one of those. And I got halfway through the first episode, and I'm like, I have no idea what the hell's going on, so I stopped watching it. Because these convoluted sort of soap operas, who did who to what, and what did who to who, and I don't care. And that's kind of my that's kind of where I fall with this stuff. Like, for Krishnamurti, in Krishnamurti's case, I don't care that he had an affair with his secretary. It doesn't make any difference at all in what he says and what he talked about. Another one who, I'm genuinely sorry, but I don't care about the various scuttlebutt and scandals around Joshu Sasaki Roshi. I think this is a great book. Buddha is the Center of Gravity, and it's one of the most important books I ever read about Buddhism. And you don't try to find a copy of this. You can find it on the Terabes website as a PDF, and that's free. But if you try to buy a copy, it'll cost you like $300. This one cost me $4. But that was a long time ago. You can't get it for $4 anymore. This one's a lot easier to find, about Tathagata Zen. I think you have to order this directly from Mount Baldy Zen Center. Anyway. But I don't care about his scandals. I tried, this has been years ago when they first blew up, I tried to sort of follow what he's supposed to have done. And I'm not saying he didn't do any of these things. I just find that when I'm reading it, I'm just reading a lot of blah, blah, blah. That's what it feels like. It genuinely, honest to God, when I read the Joshu Sasaki stuff, it just sounded like squawking to me in my head. It was just like rah, rah, rah. I just don't care. Same with the Krishnamurti tell-all book. It was just like a lot of nails on chalkboard. Sort of. I just get an irritation from reading that stuff. And so I just don't care. And there's maybe a bigger reason why I don't care, and I want to try to explain this with somewhat of a metaphor, which is two of my favorite musical artists, neither one is my number one or anything, but they're two people I enjoy their music a lot, would be Ted Nugent and Neil Young. These are my favorite albums by each artist. This is my favorite Neil Young album. It's my favorite Nugent album is the first one, the first solo album, which is just called Ted Nugent. And in both cases, I find their non-musical output, I don't know if output is the word, but let's see where we go, irritating and depressing. Like Ted Nugent was the first. I'd liked Ted Nugent for years, and then he started going on, I don't know, talk shows and things, and talking about his political philosophy, which is this kind of over the top right wing stuff, and I'm just like, I don't. And there was a time when I'm like, I don't know if I can even listen to Ted Nugent anymore because I'm just going to keep thinking about his stupid right wing politics. And then more recently, Neil Young with his dumbass boycotting of Spotify because he thinks Joe Rogan is spreading misinformation. And I'm just going, so it's like the left-wing version and the right-wing version of the same damn thing, of people who've just gone way over the top with their I don't know if you even call it philosophy, but their rhetoric and whatever the hell it is. And I don't like it. But I found that in the case of Ted Nugent, because it happened earlier, it happened like probably back in the 90s or something like that when I first started getting annoyed by him. I didn't listen to him for a while, and then I started putting some Ted Nugent music on, I don't know, on a whim, and I'm like, this is really good. You know, I don't care that it's made by a guy whose political philosophies are stupid. And the same thing with Neil Young. I think his music is really great, and the fact that it's done by a guy with dumbass political philosophies is irrelevant to me. I have to say I like Neil Young probably a little bit better than Ted Nugent, not political wise, but in terms of music, because he's much more, varied. And of course, hold on. Neil was a member of the Buffalo Springfield, and if you don't know the Buffalo Springfield, you're no longer allowed to watch this channel. You have to go listen to some Buffalo Springfield, one of the greatest bands of the 60s. and like you can't argue with that. And Ted Nugent was a member of another one of the great bands of the '60s, maybe not as great as Buffalo Springfield, but he was in the Amboy Dukes, who did "Journey to the Center of Your Mind," which is a mind-blowing psychedelic piece by a guy who never did drugs in his life, which I think it's funny. I don't think he wrote the lyrics to that one, though. So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that this is one of those things that musicians say a lot, and I think people who aren't musicians might think it's just pretentious or just trying to kind of inflate their egos by invoking something. But the music comes from someplace else. I don't know if it comes from physically someplace else, but it comes from another part of this universe that isn't too much involved in the personality of the musician who plays it. The musician who plays it does have some kind of filtering or something that makes it come through in a specific way, but the music itself is beyond that. So Ted Nugent's the guitar solo on Stranglehold is one of the best guitar solos ever. It really it surpasses a lot of the stuff by giants like Jimi Hendrix or Eric Clapton or I don't know who, Jimmy Page and these people. I mean, Nugent is as an amazing of a lead guitarist as any of those guys. He's a little anyway. We could debate. He's a little less finessed in other areas, but when it comes to like playing good lead guitar, my God, it's hard to beat Ted Nugent. And that doesn't come from the place in Ted Nugent that loves Trump. You know, and the music of Neil Young doesn't come from the place that boycotts Spotify because of Joe Rogan spreading misinformation. Dumbest thing in the world. Anyway, it doesn't. There's a lot of reasons a musician might want to boycott Spotify, but that's not one of the good reasons. But it comes from someplace else. It comes from another place, and I can kind of speak to this in my own career and stuff. I wrote about all of my personal scandals, at least the ones that came up before the book was written, in a book called Zen Wrapped in Karma, Dipped in Chocolate. And if you want to see what sort of a person I am, you can go read that book. It's the only book of mine that I haven't done an audiobook of it, because I do my own audiobooks. I read them myself. So if you want to go on Audible, actually here's a hint for anybody who wants to support me, is I get more money per book from Audible books than I do, a lot more, like 10 times more than I do from printed books. I don't know why, but that's just how it goes. But I do all my audiobooks myself, and I cannot face reading Zen Wrapped in Karma, Dipped in Chocolate out loud because it's just too much. I tried to pour everything out that was, you know, if you want the bad stuff about a spiritual teacher exposed, here it is. One of the problems with the whole spiritual teaching thing is that there is a demand of purity. And anybody who's in the game that I'm in will be examined for signs of impurity. And the signs of impurity will let everybody know that, oh no, you can't listen to this guy because he's impure. He's done the impure thing, and therefore all of his teachings are garbage. What I find is that the teachings, I don't even like that, the word sounds so pretentious, but anyway, the teachings are coming from someplace else. And now here's where I get pretentious. There are times when, it usually happens when I am speaking to an audience that is particularly receptive and open to what is coming through. And if that openness occurs, something comes through that Brad, the Brad Warner personality, doesn't have a whole lot of control over. It just pours out. and I don't know where it's coming from, and often what comes out surprises me. And I find it sometimes interesting because I'm like, I didn't know I had that, because I don't have it, because the personality version, the small mind version, the individual self of me doesn't have that. Yet somehow access can be opened up to that, and there it is. And it's something completely other. So any other thing that I've done in my life is irrelevant. Now, I think the early Buddhists kind of understood that people's sexual activities become an impediment to. If a teacher has something going on in that area, it becomes an impediment to others learning from that teacher. And I think that was probably one of the reasons for the insistence on Buddhists taking an oath of celibacy in the early days. Buddhists in the Japanese lineages don't do that anymore. I think other lineages do. I don't know all the details of who does and who doesn't, but that's it was probably because of that. And personally, one of the things, my friend who talked to me about Krishna Mty, I was trying to kind of communicate back with him, and he said, I need to get out more. And I think what he means is that I need to understand what normal people think. This is one of the things I've always had, and it's one of the problems I've always had in my life. I kind of feel like Mr. Spock sometimes. Your human emotions confuse me. I do not understand them, because often what normal people think and how they perceive things, I don't get it. I just don't get it. I don't know if this means I'm on the autistic spectrum or something, but especially when it comes to these kind of sex scandal things, I don't get it. Example number one, my favorite example, is the Genpo Roshi. Now, some of you who have been following me for a while will know this, but I was very critical a few years ago about this teacher named Genpo Roshi, who came out with this thing called Big Mind, which guaranteed everyone who did it to have an enlightenment experience almost instantly, within like a day. He would sometimes claim that he could give a person a genuine enlightenment experience within like a few hours. And he was charging, in some cases, $50,000 to come and sit with him and get this genuine enlightenment experience. And I was very critical of that because he's one of the big people in American Zen. A lot of American Zen people trace their lineages through Genpo Roshi. And there's a whole reason behind that, but I'll let you look that up on the internet. But it's true. And he's a hugely influential guy. And I thought, this is terrible. This is a really, really terrible thing. This is a total violation of everything that Buddhism stands for, etc., etc. And I've made videos about it, and you can go look for those if you want. One of them has a sock monkey in it, if you want to see it. That's the first video, one of the first videos I ever made about Zen for YouTube. And it still gets looked at by people. Now, after I said that thing, I was the only one in all of American Zen Buddhism, one person, this guy, criticized Genpo Roshi over the Big Mind stuff. Nobody else did. Not a single person. Yet, when he had a sex scandal, I don't know, he had an affair with somebody, I don't know. I think he was married and had an affair with somebody. I don't know what the deal was. Then he gets canceled, and then he, sadly disrobes. I love that. They call it disrobing, getting naked. He took off his robes and declared himself no longer a Zen teacher. Of course, he still makes loads of money and stuff, and he's still got a thing going. And I don't know what changed. He just doesn't wear the robes anymore. But that's what got him, was he had a sex scandal. Nobody cared that he was violating the main, everything that Buddhism should stand for, he was violating. Then he has a sex scandal, and then they care. So this confuses me, and I don't understand it. And I accept that it's a thing, but it just doesn't mean anything to me at all. So I don't know. Do I have a conclusion to this? No. Do I like rhetorical questions? No. Do I like people who ask rhetorical questions of themselves and answer them? No. But I do like your donations because they're what keeps me making a living. And so you can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts. Those are my main and usually only ways of making a living, and I appreciate your support, but you don't have to support me if you don't want to support me. Also, I'm working on making that site, getting the official securedom. I have an internet guy who assures me that my blog is as secure as it can possibly be, but I haven't paid for the damn official certificate of secureness, which is a kind of a ripoff, and so I get the people sometimes get this notice that it's insecure, but I'll unsecure. So I'll fix that. Anyway, we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Hey Ziggy, what do you think of people who have sex scandals? Or do you know of doggies who hump the wrong poodle? Does that bother you? Yeah, I don't get it either. All right, you can go back to sleep on your little bed. We'll talk to you later, Ziggy. Bye.